The Dorian mode is really good for songwriting on guitar because it has a smooth, mellow vibe, but it also has this really cool sound that songwriters use all of the time. Despite its minor nature, it's not as heavy or sad as the minor key. For this reason, it is used widely in pop, rock and jazz to represent emotions that are somewhere between the happy major scale and the gloomy natural minor scale. But which one of these is right for you? Well, in this video, I'm going to put them head to head so you can decide what will work best in your next song. Modes can cause a headache for guitarists, but if you can understand the major scale, then you will have no problems with the modes. Another part of the confusion is that there are a couple of ways to approach thinking about modes. I'll quickly run through both so you can grasp the concept, and then we can jump into the head-to-head battle. Let's start with the major scale. It has 7 notes, each labelled with a number from 1 to 7. These are used as a point of reference for other scales and modes. For example, the C major scale has the notes C, D, E, F, G, A and B, with the steps 1 to 7. Each of these notes is a certain distance apart, either a whole step or a half step. These are called intervals. The frets on your guitar divide notes on a string by half steps. This means we can count up the intervals which make up the major scale. This is called an interval pattern. So in our C major example, we have the following distances between the notes: whole step, half step, whole step, whole step, whole step, half step. This is the interval pattern for any major scale. The note you start on is the root note and gives the scale its letter name. Chords in the major key are just created with notes from the major scale. This is done in a process called stacking thirds. This involves taking a note of the scale, skipping a note, adding this second note to the first, then skipping another note and adding a third note. These 3 notes create chords that are called triads. These include chords that you will be familiar with, like major and minor chords. You can see this process for the C major key on screen. These chords then get labelled with Roman numerals from 1 to 7. These refer to the root note of the chord, each one being on one of the scale steps that we discussed earlier. So the chords in the key of C major are C major, D minor, E minor, F major, G major, A minor and B diminished. When writing songs with the major key, the 1 chord is considered the home base. It feels safe and secure. This is known as the tonal centre. Alternatively, if we use the same set of chords, but the 6th chord feels like home, then we are in the natural minor key. This is also known as the Aeolian mode. To give you a feel for this, have a listen to the next chord progression, A minor, D minor and E minor. We know these chords are from the C major key, but played like this, the A minor chord feels like home. We have shifted the tonal centre. You can do a similar thing for any of the 7 chords. These new tonal centres are called modal tonalities. 3 of these focus around major chords, so are generally bright, whilst 3 focus around minor chords, so are darker or moodier. If we use the minor 2 chord as our tonal centre, then we are in the Dorian mode, so we know this will have a minor flavour to it. You can also see why this is known as the 2nd mode of the major scale. This is the first way that people think about modes. You take a major scale that you know, start on a particular note other than the root note, and then use the same notes in the same order. For example, C major has the notes C, D, E, F, G, A and B. If we start on the 2nd note D and start with that, then we have the notes D, E, F, G, A, B and C. This is the D Dorian mode. The same reordering is true of the interval pattern that we saw earlier. This means the Dorian scale interval pattern is whole step, half step, whole step, whole step, whole step, half step, whole step. This reveals the formula for creating any Dorian scale, and also the 2nd way that people approach the modes. They are like individual distinct scales with their own unique sound and interval pattern. You could also describe it with scale degrees as follows. Remember, these are in relation to the major scale. This gives us the final piece of the puzzle, the Roman numerals to label our Dorian mode chords with. In the D Dorian tonality, this would be the chords 1 D minor, 2 E minor, flat 3 F major, 4 G major, 5 A minor, 6 B diminished, and flat 7 C major. So we've got the minor tinged Dorian mode, but how does this compare to the minor key when it comes to songwriting? Well, there is only one note of difference between the two. If you look at the scale degrees of Dorian versus natural minor or Aeolian, you can see that the only change is the sixth note. In Dorian it's a natural sixth, in minor it's a flat or minor sixth. This single note gives Dorian its brighter, less dramatic sound. In the next example, I'll repeatedly play the D minor chord on the piano. Over the top I'll play up and down the D Dorian mode on guitar. Then I'll repeat this with the D minor scale. Listen to the difference and which one might be most suitable for your own song. This note of difference carries over into the chords, and the most important of these chords is the major 4. Some would say this is critical to the Dorian sound. I'm going to switch to A Dorian and the A minor key for examples now. But remember that you can use any key and just follow the same pattern of Roman numerals to achieve the same sort of sound. First up, I'll play you a 1 flat 7 4 progression in A Dorian. Listen for the bright uplift the major 4 brings. Then compare this with the A minor 1 flat 7 minor 4. Listen to how much sadder and heavier using D minor here sounds. If you're working with modes for the first time, then it's easy to become confused and to lose interest. That's exactly why I send a free weekly newsletter to thousands of guitarists, breaking down songwriting concepts in a clear and practical way that will keep you motivated. If you want to write better songs with more confidence, then head to writeonguitar.com or click the link in the description to sign up today. The 1 and 4 chords feature widely in Dorian mode progressions and songs. As such, they are a great scaffold to simply add other chords to while maintaining the signature Dorian sound. Feel free to experiment and see what ideas that you create. Another thing that you can consider with the 4 chord is to play it as a sus4. This works well on the guitar, often by simply adding or removing a finger. For example, D sus4 is a staple of many songs written on the guitar. This can also be applied to the minor 4 chord in minor key progressions. In the next example, I'll play a 1 flat 7 flat 3 4 progression twice. First up with the D major in A Dorian, and then with D minor in A minor. On both occasions, I'll move to D sus4. Listen out for the ambiguous tension this brings to both versions. We saw earlier that there was one note different between Dorian and natural minor, and we've explored the most important chord this difference created, the major 4. But there are also 2 more chords that are unique to Dorian, the minor 2 and the diminished 6. You are free to use any chords you like in your Dorian songs, but you are not likely to find many examples that use these 2 and 6 chords. The diminished 6 chord has a strong pull to the parent major key, so it's easiest to avoid this chord. The minor 2 chord doesn't do a great deal when paired with 1, but it's still worth a look at. I'll play it in 2 ways. First with a rising 1 2 flat 3 progression. Here this is the only Dorian chord, so listen to how it brings a little brightness compared to the minor key. Then I'll pair the 2 chord with 4 for a full-on Dorian feel. Listen out for the immediate uplift the major 4 brings, as we heard earlier. Then I'll contrast the progression with A minor, where the 2 chord is diminished and 4 is minor, providing a much gloomier, sombre feel. I'll also throw in the D sus4 chord again for some variation. So we've seen the differences between minor and Dorian chord progressions, but how do songwriters approach this in reality? Well, rather than fighting the two head to head, what often occurs is a more blended approach. This has 2 benefits. You can pick the best elements of both minor keys and the Dorian mode, and you don't have to make up your mind. You are free to mix and match. This hybrid tonality will often utilise both the major and minor versions of the 4 chord. It will also use a major 5 chord, which is a really common technique in minor key progressions. This mixture of chords can most famously be found in the 8 chord loop for Hotel California by the Eagles. If you're writing a song like this, just be aware of what notes you are using in the melody or solos over the top. The critical difference is the 6th note of the scale, so you might want to avoid that to keep the ambiguity of whether we are in Dorian or minor, and just let the chords tease where you are at different points. With that in mind, I'll play a fingerstyle example now that utilises the major 4 to bring in a glimpse of Dorian brightness. Listen out for the difference this brings compared to more minor sections. Also note the use of sus4 chords for variation and interest. Trying to write songs in Dorian is hopeless if you don't know the fundamentals. Watch the video on screen to learn the essential elements of writing a song on the guitar.